Okay, everyone. Thank you so much to the TMLS organizers and to RBC for the opportunity to speak today, and to all of you for tuning in. So my name is Brechann McGoey, and I have been working at RBC for about 1.5 years now, where I'm currently a senior data scientist in data and analytics, or DNA for short. I had a bit of an unusual route to data science. I have a bachelor's degree in biology and graduate degrees in evolutionary biology. So if anyone listening is hoping to break into data science from maybe a more less typical background, feel free to reach out. I'm always very happy to talk about my experiences. And I'm a firm believer that a data science team is stronger if it has diverse backgrounds and perspectives. So in DNA, the data scientists have different areas of expertise. And based on our areas of specialty, we're assigned to squads where we work directly with a business line to provide insights and build models, or to products, which are cross-disciplinary teams that build reusable tools, which can be accessed and customized to meet the needs of multiple business lines. And the product that I've spent much of the last year working on is called Path. As you can imagine, there's no shortage of data at the bank. RBC has millions of clients who interact with us through a variety of channels and platforms. And given the size and scope of this data, there's a growing need to be able to synthesize it together and to understand client behavior. The Path team is working to meet this need by building a journey analytics platform to connect client and staff actions across channels and systems. And doing so elucidates journeys and also unearths opportunities for improvement in terms of efficiency and client experience. And I want to emphasize that we're not just solving this for one line of business. Instead, we're working with multiple RBC groups simultaneously to try to build tools that are useful to all of them. Our first goal is really to help our partners understand the paths that clients are taking. And then the next level is to capitalize on the data sets we create to find pain points, common inefficiencies, and anticipate next actions. And these insights can be used to help improve navigation and the client experience. And we're hoping to reduce churn and improve positive engagement. So as I mentioned, each data scientist in DNA comes from a group with a certain area of expertise. And the specialization of my group is graph analytics. And here by graph, I don't mean a chart, I mean a network. So I'm not sure if everyone in the audience will be familiar with this concept, so just in case, a graph is simply nodes connected by edges. And the nodes can be any entities, people, places, things. In our case, the nodes are steps on a journey. And what those steps are will depend on which business line and therefore what data set we're working with. Both edges and nodes can have properties. So in our case, for example, the weight of edges is usually defined as the number of clients that move directly from one node to another. And graph is far from the only tool we're using in Path, but it is critical in how we characterize the flows between events and visualize that movement. We're also using community detection and centrality algorithms to augment our models and insights. So I'm going to show you the current pipeline for Path, and I'm going to emphasize the components that are the responsibilities of the data scientists, because that's my role. But I want to emphasize that this has really been a collaborative project, and it's been great to work with different people with diverse skill sets. So the first step is our session constructor. Depending on the needs of our partners, the input and output data sets differ, but we always follow the same pattern where we're constructing paths of actions over predefined periods of time. And the length of time is going to depend on the type of path we're looking at. Given the size of these data sets, this work is done using Spark. And I've drawn this in a little turquoise rectangle with the Dataiku logo because the data science team is using the Dataiku platform for this work. So the output data sets are then used to create APIs and by the data science team for deeper analyses. And we're calling this component Path Analyzer, but really it's just a catch-all to describe all the insights and models that we're building on top of these data sets. That product is that there are RBCers from a variety of technical backgrounds. And the challenge with this is what I think of as a trade-off between usability and flexibility. So what I mean by that is if we have someone who is on a partner team, but they're also a data scientist, maybe what's best for them is to get data sets in a Jupyter notebook, and they'll be happy to run ad hoc analyses or customize their own visualizations. But that's going to be inaccessible to stakeholders who have a different skill set. So to provide the maximum value we can, we've just tried to make a plethora of options. So our consumers could use our data sets, but they could also, we can build them custom visualizations. They can access our notebooks, the APIs, and also our UI UX team has built a self-serve analytics platform, which is accessible to anyone regardless of technical background. In addition, we're also currently onboarding to Neo4j, including the visualization tool Bloom. And adding this tool, just another tool in our toolbox, it'll allow us to store things in a graph native format and also help us build more complex visualizations for our consumers. So I'm going to show you what the UI looks like for this. This is Path Explorer, so users could see the journeys taken in specific categories and how many users branch off at each point. And I'll mention, like, these are all aggregated, right? So you're just seeing the total number of clients who took a path, not a specific client taking a path. In Common Path, users could specify a start and end point and see the most common paths between them. They could choose how many paths they'd like to see, and they're going to get a breakdown of the percentage of clients who took each one. In Journey Mapper, a partner could put together the idealized path from 2 points and find out how many clients are actually taking it. So maybe you have this optimal way in your mind of how people should log into online banking and pay a bill. You could see how many people are actually taking that exact journey versus how many are paying a bill altogether. And lastly, we have Network Viewer, where users could look at movement from nodes to one another. And again, this is looking at it in a graph framework. And so obviously the first takeaway about this UI is that, you know, it's accessible to people regardless of skill set. But I also think the great thing about it has been it's good for demoing to other groups. So we're trying to make this as reusable as possible, and it helps if people can imagine just plugging in their own data sets. So it's increased our appeal and our value that way. And lastly, I wanted to share a bit about the pipeline and tools that we're using for the Path Analyzer component, which again is just like kind of the data science component of this. So typically we take our data sets that we've built and then we use PySpark to process them some more. So for example, into edge tables. So when we first started on this journey, we were worried that the size of our data would constrain us and that we'd be forced to, for example, choose between using something like graph frames so we could encompass all our data, but we wouldn't have access to the range of algorithms that you'd have in a tool like NetworkX. But that hasn't been the case, because just because you're working with big data doesn't mean necessarily that your network is big in terms of the number of nodes. So usually our networks are only up to in the tens of thousands of nodes, which is totally amenable for working with NetworkX. So most of our analysis is done in Python. We're typically using D3.js for our visualizations, which I really recommend. There's maybe a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get past that, it's very customizable. So we're using that mostly for our graph visualizations, but also for other things. We are also using Bokeh. And just to give you an idea of the type of questions that have been posed to us by our stakeholders, our clients who moved to digital channels in the spring, reverting to physical channels while things were starting to open back up. What mobile or OLB paths lead to calls to the advice center? How has COVID affected the volume and reasons for advice center calls? And how are clients and advisors using our platforms? And so I mentioned a few times that we're hoping this will improve the experience for clients. We're also hoping it'll improve experiences for staff, because there's cases where advisors have to move back and forth between multiple platforms. And so this would really be a way of quantifying that. And hopefully we can make things more seamless for them. And with that, I just want to say a big thank you to the Path team. It's been great to work with such a dedicated group. And I'll be happy to take any questions that people have. Okay, so okay, I'm just going to scroll through these questions. What happens if the path is not linear, or if there's some feedback loops? Do you distinguish between users going all the way versus ones who go through feedback loop? That's a really good question. So for the first one, what happens if the path is not linear? It depends on what we're looking at. Sometimes we'll just take like, let's say you want to go from A to B. We'll take the closest time you were at A to B. right? So you would cut off the first part of the path where you are at A. But we also, in other cases, are looking at the length of the path and also how much time someone's spending on each step of the path, which are ways at getting at kind of inefficiencies, that looping around, especially when we're looking at cases where people end up having to cross channel. So in other words, we call it like deflection or digital failure. Someone's trying to do something online and they don't have success and they end up having to call the advice center, and maybe that's a negative experience for them. We can look at how long their session was as a way of getting at that. Okay, I also have graduate training in life sciences. I was wondering, how did you leverage your degree to work in data science? Okay, great question. I did do, so this was a few years ago, but I did do a boot camp that was specifically aimed at transitioning academics into data science, which was really great for me. I don't think it's necessary for everybody, but for me, that was really helpful in terms of learning new skills and also networking. I think, I mean, everyone says it, but networking really is the most important thing. I'm really shy, so it's hard for me, but it is the best advice I've gotten and can give. Why Neo4j versus alternatives? I mean, that's a great question. And I mean, like, one honest answer is that's what's available to us right now. But I think it is also a good choice for our current use case for that work. What pain points do you expect? Oh, okay, so yeah, so for most of this work, and I am a big I guess proponent of, use the tool that's best for the job. So I wouldn't, we didn't start using a graph database because we didn't need it. But moving forward, for the next project we were working on, we really are gonna actually need to store things in a graph native format. What is the model used to determine path? It's not a model. That's a great question. We do build models on top of path, but really it's more of a like putting data into a different format, to be totally honest. Can you speak on the business outcome from this project? It sounds cool. Okay, yeah, that's a great question. And obviously that's a question we have to answer a lot in the bank, is to kind of defend our value. So one outcome from this is, answering those specific questions. So I think the most obvious one where we can put a sort of a dollar value on things is that deflection case, where if you have people who are having to call the advice center, obviously that costs the bank money, but it also probably represents frustration on the behalf of clients. And so I think too, you'll have, maybe a subset of people who end up calling because they're having an issue with online banking, but they might just be the tip of the iceberg, and maybe more people are having that same problem. So I think cutting those volumes down helps both clients and the bank. Oh, great question. Okay, let me just make sure I understand this question. The entities of the network are RBC retail and commercial customers, or efforts spent on entity. Okay, so for the first part of the question, the first partner group we're working with is this digital intelligence group. So they were focused around online banking paths or mobile banking. We also have other groups like personal banking and Canadian banking operations that we're working with. For us, so far, we haven't had to expend any effort into entity resolution because all our entities are these steps along the path, and they're pretty clear cut for us. But obviously, other groups on the DS team have to use that. What are the advantages of using Path compared to other BI tools like Tableau? That's a great question, because we've been able to custom build this exact purse while still trying to keep it reusable for different teams. In RBC, it's been the best option. Any other questions? I'll mention too that we have a booth, which we would love for you to stop by. So if you have questions about working at RBC or the different types of work that are going on there, please do stop by, and there'll be friendly people there to answer your questions. And I'll mention too that I come from the team that's focused on graph analytics, but if you have a different area of interest, there's a wide array of data science work going on at the bank. Okay, well, thanks so much, everyone. I think we're at time. So feel free, again, to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to get in touch and answer any questions you might have. So thank you so much.